Hello, welcome to Community Matters. I'm your host, Becky Steinbruner, and I'm honored to be with you here on SantaCruzVoice.com for the next 2 hours. I want to also thank our spot here, Satellite Digital Media Workspace Center. That's at 325 Soquel Avenue in Santa Cruz, between Ocean Street and the beautiful San Lorenzo River. You can be here too. It is a wonderful place to work do your remote work. If you are looking for a spot for a clean, safe, very quiet spot to do remote work, maybe have small group meetings. They're small enclosed areas, and I encourage you to do so. You can come by and take a look at it, get a free tour, and try it out on the second Wednesday of every month for free. You can do that. Again, Satellite Workspace and Digital Media Center. We share this space with Community Television, a gem in our community. They record a lot of our local government meetings, and you can find those for free on the web by Googling Government on Demand, CTV for Community Television, and it'll pop right up, and you can look at many different community meetings. If you just can't happen to be there for a County Board of Supervisor meeting at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, you can at least see what happened. So many thanks to Satellite Workspace and Digital Media Center for being here in Santa Cruz. Today's program is going to be very interesting, and I hope you will listen in and call in if you are so moved. Our first hour will be a discussion with a guest, Mr. Tom Ginsburg. He is a resident of Capitola in an area where there has been proposed a very large affordable housing development, and I became aware of this this project 3270 Capitola Road. That's just across the street from the Capitola Mall parking garage on Capitola Road, if you're familiar with that area. It was interesting. 3720 Capitola Road. It was interesting at the Capitola City Council meeting held Thursday night, and I was very impressed by the responsiveness of the council and the very polite, respectful, well-organized manner that the residents displayed and put forth. A lot of people showed up. And so Mr. Tom Ginsburg is one of that group, and he will be joining us here by telephone in a little bit for the first hour. We can talk about that. This will be of interest, I think, to many because it is an issue that many people in Santa Cruz County are crying out about. The plethora of large projects in small neighborhoods, and how it affects not only the character of life, but the traffic and everything. So that will be our first hour. Our second hour will be Miss Nina Beety, a researcher extraordinaire from the Monterey Peninsula, calling in to talk with us about the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute sonar mapping, geotechnical mapping that's happening using very loud sonar technology that is harmful to many forms of life. And she's going to be talking with us about that, and it may also spill into the battery energy project cleanup at Moss Landing. Nina Beety was one of the few who raised concern at the Planning Commission in Monterey when the Vistra Moss 300 project was approved by the Planning Commission. And you are in for a real treat to hear Nina Beety. She is an amazing, amazing researcher and a dedicated activist on behalf of the people. So that will be our second hour. I will be talking a little bit, too, about the upcoming November 18th, that's next Tuesday, Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisor meeting, where at 1:30 p.m. the board will consider the draft battery energy storage system ordinance, the new rules this county is putting together. I've been talking about that pretty much every week because it is incredibly important that people pay attention to this and get involved as much as you can, because these new rules will allow large, and I'm talking 300 storage containers large, filled with flammable explosive lithium batteries to be located in our neighborhoods. There's already one in permit process at 90 Minto Road off of Green Valley, adjacent to some very densely populated working class neighborhoods, not to mention College Lake, and not to mention the Santa Cruz County Fairgrounds, our county's primary evacuation site. So that will be also discussed, and I urge you to look up regarding the ordinance hearing next Tuesday. Look up the new Santa Cruz County BESS is an acronym for Battery Energy Storage System, BESS ordinance, and the county just launched last week a new web page that you can click on buttons and read the ordinance, read what AB 205 is, which is the ability via the legislative action to allow a developer of one of these large BESS energy storage projects to go to the state for opt-in approval, and read about that. It has been used as a threat to frighten, I think, and this is my opinion, to frighten the local community and local jurisdictions that this developer will take that AB 205 action and we won't have anything to say about it. But after further research and a discussion with others who are also researching this, it might actually be a pretty good thing. And that would be because we would be ensured that the project developer would have to conduct at their own expense a very thorough environmental impact report. There would be required a number of public hearings in our area, and there would have to be an alternatives analysis, a look at, well, what other sites did you consider? None of that will happen. Let me tell you, none of that will happen if it is handed to the local jurisdiction. And that's my voice coming from experience, having watched what happened at the Aptos Village project. So don't be bluffed. That's what I'm saying. And impress upon your fire officials to get involved. They're being bluffed too, and they're not taking the action that they need to take in order to protect their own firefighters as well as the general public. All right, so we'll be talking about that in the second hour some. This first hour is going to be dedicated to what's going on in the city of Capitola with a project at 3720 Capitola Road and other projects kind of like it along Capitola Road. I went to a city council meeting not for this issue, but I was impressed by what I saw happening. And so I have asked some members of that community on Bulb Avenue at Capitola Road to call in and talk with us here today. And I believe our guest, Mr. Tom Ginsburg, is on the line. Let's see if we hear him. Hello?
Yes. Hi, Becky. Good afternoon.
Hi, Tom. Nice to hear you. Are you hearing me all right?
Yeah, I'm hearing you fine. Just thank you. I do
Okay.
have to let you know, unfortunately, I have about 15 minutes to spare today because I am working and I did actually have a work situation come up that I'll have to deal with, but I do have about 15 minutes of time to chat with you today. Sorry, it couldn't be longer, but I appreciate you having me
No,
on the show.
this is marvelous. Thank you very much. And if any of your community members want to call in, they may do so as well and stay on longer if they want to. So thank you. Tom Ginsburg, you are a resident of the Bulb Avenue area of Capitola. You're part of a group that showed up and has been showing up before this Capitola City Council regarding a project, 3720 Capitola Road. Why don't you just take the floor and tell us what you want the visitors or the listeners to know about this and the work that your community and the City Council are doing?
All right. Hey, thank you, Becky. I'm really going to be just talking here more in general terms about what's going on. This property used to be the old Capitola Kennels property. It's right across the street from the AT&T central office, the phone company building. So basically right at the intersection where Claire's, Bulb, and Capitola Road meet. So there have been multiple proposals for this property, including an attempt to annex one of the houses that's actually in the county, because the city, the boundary for the city does strange things in that neighborhood, and it's just
Yes,
the very
it
top of the
does.
bulb that's actually in Capitola. So anyway, there have been multiple proposals, 93 units of senior assisted living that was going to be 5 stories high for this property. The council has found basically defects in all those applications. And then there was just an attempt to first just 2 proposals were brought to them about that. They're both rejected because they didn't really meet the community benefits. And then what happened, they wanted to just annex the house without putting any kind of proposal. And we figured they're trying to do it in a 2-step situation. And then most recently, they had a new proposal just for the 3720 Capitola Road house. And the thing is that here's the thing. I don't want to really get into all the specifics about what we're doing as a group, other than let people know this. We as a group are not NIMBY, not in my backyard. I like to think of us as BRIMBY, if you will, be responsible in my backyard.
Yeah.
And so we recognize the owner of that property has the right to develop it. And we also recognize that they're more than likely going to put something larger than we would prefer. We understand an owner has a right to get a return on their investment. And also, if they're able to provide a benefit to the community, and that is with housing, whether it's low-income housing, whether it's senior housing, whatever it may be, that they have the right to do so. But what we as a group, the Bulb Avenue neighborhood, come together to basically ask for responsible development, taking into account the effects on the neighborhood, because there's some special situations where we have a very narrow street, Cedar Street. You can't turn into the property westbound from Capitola Road. You can't make a U-turn at Claire's to go to that property. So a lot of the traffic would be routed right up our little narrow street. So there's various things like that, and I'm not going to get much into this, but here's what I want to really talk about. You and your community and your neighbors. What this experience for us has been, it's brought our neighborhood together. Neighbors getting to know their neighbors. We've had block parties in the past. We have a Facebook group where we can keep in touch, various things going on in the neighborhood. And we also now have a text group for neighbors to let us know about things that are happening. So this experience of wanting to work with a developer to have a responsible development, that's our goal. And it's brought our neighborhood together, even when we're presented with proposals that they've been trying to push through with very little notice. So that's the main takeaway here for anyone listening who is concerned about things happening in their neighborhood. It may be a proposal, it may be a development proposal, it may be something completely different. Get to know your neighbors. Get involved and come to a common ground and understanding about various issues, and you will have power to make things better for you and your neighborhood. So that's our takeaway. There's this whole project itself. We're still going to see what happens with what's presented next. And all we're asking is that the city and the developer consider the neighborhood before proceeding. That's really it in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. How did your group coalesce? What was there, one person or a couple of people that were really the drivers, or just to give people out there who may be seeing this come to their neighborhood, how did you do it?
Well, pretty much, yes, there were a couple of drivers in our neighborhood that started off some years ago with saying, like, I realized I've lived in this neighborhood for 37 years and I did not know 90% of my neighbors' names. My immediate neighbors on my block, my cul-de-sac, actually, I got to know most of them, but a whole bunch of people on the adjacent street, Bulb Avenue, I did not know. It started off with having a block party so that we got to get to know each other. We got to understand what we talked about, things going on. We talked about traffic. We talked about businesses in the area. We talked about our hobbies, what we like in music. And so the key is just the neighbors getting to know each other made it that much easier to then organize when it came to having to get issues addressed, like, for example, when proposals showed up for development. So that started it off. And as I mentioned, we also started a Facebook group. And I say we because I may be here today talking to you, but I am not the driver of this. There are other neighbors that were the ones that got things going and off the ground. And I just saw what with our neighborhood coming together like this, that it was really a joy to see that and then have the ability to find this common ground when we meet to be able to then tackle on issues that may be coming up in front of us, like these proposals that were a little bit on the unreasonable side, shall we say.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, how have you folks coached each other in effective work with your elected officials? That was very evident last night. Very, very well done. And the council listened. So talk with us a little bit about that, because sometimes people go in and they're angry and it really is not effective. So what have you done within your group to really help people understand the best way to get the ear of those who are the decision makers?
Reality is that, like I said, I consider ourselves brindy about being responsible in my backyard. And so the way that we did that is just pointing out some facts, like, hey, for example, the proposal last night was a consent agenda item that got thrown on. They were expecting a letter of approval for a grant. When they had put in this information and they pulled it off the agenda and then they put it into the packet 20 minutes before the period of closure for comments and the ability to get any information in the packet. That's when they actually presented their proposal.
Wow.
Which is just, to me, it was a little like, whoa, okay. The city recognized that this was unreasonable. They recognized that being presented with one proposal and saying, if we don't get what we want, we're going to then use the builder's remedy and build a monstrosity there. It was common sense, really. And I think the fact that we showed up and didn't just let something slip on the consent agenda and be approved without discussion. And those kind of things happen, right? Because in most times you go to a meeting and there's a consent agenda, and that's exactly what it is. It's just like, okay, these have already been discussed, or these have already been, they don't really need anything other than a verbal approval, and we move on.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at the meeting yesterday because I had a conflict, but I know it was wonderful that my neighbors came through, and we all were on the same page. Be responsible. Be responsible. And I think it was pretty evident that most of the council understood that, and that's why they, at least in this case, in this one snapshot of what's going on, they were in our favor because they recognize that the developers, the owners of such proposals need to do it in a responsible and correct way instead of, in effect, trying to ramrod something through.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much, I think they just saw reason in that we had reasonable and sensible arguments for process being followed. And that's why they went ahead and voted as they did last night.
And that was really great to see, let me tell you, because I rarely go to the Capitola City Council meetings. I went there for another reason, the annexation that they had before them. But I go to County Board of Supervisor meetings, and rarely do I see them take action like I saw the Capitola City Council do. It was refreshing that they actually listened to your community and were responsive.
No, we appreciate that. And again, because we're coming from the viewpoint of be reasonable, not from don't, you can't, we won't allow it, we want everything to stay as it was. That's not the way things work in our current climate these days. We understand that developments are going to happen, but be responsible.
Yeah.
That's all we're asking.
Yeah. That's very wise advice, and it certainly impressed upon those council members the reality that was before us all last night, that nobody has seen this project. There have been no traffic studies, and your community did a very good job of outlining the importance of having that information before making a decision on anything regarding the project. And you also had the experience with this developer on another affordable project called The Bluffs. Do you want to talk briefly? And I know you're up against the clock. Talk briefly about that, if that helped inform you.
Well, I mean, I know that there are neighborhood concerns about that. Certainly, it did get put through. But as it was pointed out by Susan Westman, who she's the newest city council member, but she was on the planning commission. They went through the proper steps that they needed to. Now, yes, not everybody in the neighborhood is happy because, as it is with these projects, they don't provide very much parking, and the neighborhood's going to get affected most likely. They've literally just started moving in 2 days ago, so it's still yet to be seen. But it was pointed out that this developer, which is the same one, not the same owner of the property, but were in concert with this developer, they went through the process the proper ways as opposed to the way they attempted to do this last night. Now, granted, I think they have some deadline for a grant that they're trying to get to, but it's kind of like with a situation, it's like, well, suddenly your emergency is my problem. If you didn't plan well enough in the beginning on how to go about this, do we just fall over and bend over and take it? No, I think the city council recognized that it's the same developer, and they were kind of surprised at the way that this was presented. So, as far as I can say, be reasonable, and that came through with the council and the action that they took. And we're still hoping that we can, at some point when another plan comes through, be able to work with the owner and developer to help us with mitigating some of the effects of that project. And we are planning to stay and be reasonable. And that's with our neighborhood coming together and finding common ground. I look forward to see what's next. This thing isn't over, and we don't expect it to be over until there's something that is actually built on that property, and hopefully it'll have a community benefit, and it will be more reasonable, and it will work with all the neighborhood and the city of Capitola as well. That's our big hope for this.
Excellent.
And I will have to end with you
Yes.
at this point, Becky.
Yes.
Apologies for not giving more time, but thanks so much for having me on the show today, and we thank you for doing what you do as you continue to go out and monitor what's happening in not only the cities but the county, and trying to make sure that things are done the proper way as well. We appreciate you for what you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored and humbled. And thank you for your time today and your good work. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you, Tom. Bye. So, thank you to Tom Ginsburg for taking some time. He's a very busy guy, and he took time out of his workday to call in just now. So many thanks. If you are listening and you have some thoughts about this or know something about this, please feel free to call in. Here's the number, 831-265-5050. Again, 265-5050, and join the conversation. I'm really glad that Tom could join us, and if others can, I invite you to do so. The reason I wanted to have this discussion is because it is very applicable to many residential neighborhoods, with the California state legislature requiring cities and counties to build very high numbers, historically high numbers, within the next 7 years now. Many people are upset about what is being planned for their neighborhoods, like this project at 3720 Capitola Road, in sort of straddling the Capitola city boundary and the unincorporated county area. And that's actually part of why I was at this Capitola City Council meeting last night. I can talk a little bit about that. But many people are just appalled to see 4, 5, 6-story buildings, very dense apartment projects being put in their quiet neighborhoods. And it is, as Tom said, it is something that is coming because there are more people. But as he said, be responsible for the neighbors, the people who live there now, and respectful of the people who live there now, because our quality of life matters as well. And Tom did a very good job outlining how to come together as a neighborhood, get to know your neighbors, and to reach out to your elected officials early on and establish a good relationship with them. I was very impressed by the Capitola City Council last night. As I said, I usually don't go to those meetings, but I did because one of the there were 2 issues on their agenda that I was interested in, one of them being considering annexing a big piece of Live Oak and also Pleasure Point. So that's why I was there. But what I learned was amazing, and I will just fill you in a little bit about what happened. This large development had been on the agenda, and then the planning and development department found discrepancies that they were not comfortable with, and the planner really couldn't resolve them in time before, to the satisfaction of staff, before last night's meeting. So they took it off the agenda. It had been on the agenda, and it was taken off November 7th, a week ago last Friday. And so then, strangely enough, the developer decided to put it back, asked to put it back on the agenda because they were under the gun to get a letter of acceptance or support from the Capitola City Council in order to qualify for a government grant that, let's see, it's a certain kind of grant, a community development block grant, disaster recovery, multi-family housing program. And the deadline is next Friday. And the developer was there. There were 3 people representing the developer, and they each spoke repeatedly that it was imperative that their company have a letter of support from the city of Capitola for a 43-unit, 100% affordable housing space project, or they would not be able to qualify for it. They would not be able to get the money. And the interesting thing that this developer did, it is a San Diego-based CRP, Affordable Housing and Community Development. They're San Diego-based, and as Tom Ginsburg said, they were the developer, not the owner, but the developer for another nearby project called The Bluffs, which is a 36 affordable units in 2 buildings, 3 stories high, at the corner of Capitola Road and, 4401 Capitola Road, 44th Avenue and Capitola Road. So, as Tom said, that was also not what people really wanted to see in their neighborhood, but they worked it out. They went through the process. But this developer is no stranger to this county. They've done this project. The Bluffs just opened, had their grand opening 4 days ago. The council members were talking about, how great it was to see that project to the finish line. There was one resident that got up and spoke and appreciating the project had happened, and she finally had a place she could afford to live. So the project proposed at 3720 Capitola Road was a complete surprise. And even though, according to the staff report, which was a one-page thing, in September of 2025, they met with city staff to introduce a potential 100% affordable multi-family housing project at 3720 Capitola Road. And they discussed potential density scenarios for the site, streamlined ministerial processing, and the need for a letter of support from the city to make them eligible for this block grant. And on October 17th, the developer submitted a formal request for the city council to support their grant application, but there were problems, and the city could not support the project because there were problems. Well, what the developer did was so they pulled it off the main agenda for last night. And then, as Tom said, 20 minutes before the packet deadline went out, they contacted city staff. And this is Katie Herluli, Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Capitola, and asked that it be put back on. So the way the city did that was they put it on the consent agenda. And as Tom said, the consent agenda is usually relegated for things that are non-controversial, not big dollar items, just kind of getting business done, and they're not discussed generally. And all of the consent agenda is approved with one wave of the hand motion of the city council or the board of supervisors, whatever the body is. So there it was, the last item on the consent agenda, and thankfully, and it was past the time when people could submit written comment, and get it included in the packet. But thankfully, the people saw it, and I do believe they were assisted by some very good elected officials that understand this process and are supportive of maintaining a good public process. So that neighborhood was there last night, and as Tom said, that's what it takes for people to really steer the boat in a respectful way, to really make a change. You've got to show up. And they did, and they were respectful. They did not yell at anybody. They were not demeaning of the developer. They were very respectful. And that was very effective. Very effective. So it was pulled. And the other piece that I was very impressed with, the city council, is initially when things, their policy apparently is when things are pulled from the consent agenda, it is heard at the very end of the meeting. And that's what they announced. But many people were there. So I was very happy that Mayor Joe Clark, after a little bit of processing of another issue, asked how many people in the audience were there for that issue, the 3720 Capitola Road. Many people raised their hands. So he said, all right, we will look at that now. Now, how refreshing, and what a great leader to be so respectful of the people. It was very refreshing. Great city council in Capitola City. So they held the discussion. They had more comment from both the public and the developers. And then the council spoke. And here's what I learned. The developer had submitted a letter requesting that the city of Capitola Council support their project financially for this grant application. But what the developers said is that if you don't do this, I will submit a plan, an application under SB 330, which is the Permit Streamlining Act, and I will ask for 88 units if you don't do this for me now. Well, that was conceived as coercion, and I really had to perceived as coercion, and I really had to agree with that. And the city council, by and large, also did. There was one council member Orbach, who said, "Oh gosh, well, if we don't accept this 43 unit, we're gonna lose control, and it could be much bigger, and under SB 330, we won't have anything to say about this. So, yeah, I think we better support this. I think we better hop too." Well, the rest of the commission, the council, luckily said, no, that's not how we do it in Capitola. These people deserve better. We support due process and transparency. And how can we say we support a project when we haven't even seen it? Now, this is SB 330. It is the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, and it has morphed into the Permit Streamlining Act. And so under this, and the developer actually did submit a pre-application for that. So that is in the works. It was part of what many were calling coercion and a threat. But under this, it requires that the public agency for the development approve or disapprove the project within 120 days from the date of certification by the lead agency. And so they've got the City Council, City Planning Commission has a limited amount of time to make their decision once they deem the project complete to say yes or no. And they have to quickly say yes or no that it's complete. I think it's 30 days to make that determination. And I'm sorry, I thought I understood SB 330, and I went to the library and printed it out, and it's 23 pages. So we'll have more on that because I have actually invited Miss Katie Herlily from the City of Capitola Community and Economic Development Director to be my guest next Friday. So hopefully we'll get a better handle on what that would look like if this project goes that way. If you're interested and want to call in, please do so. Here's the number, 831-265-5050. We've got about 10 minutes to continue on this, but I want to say that, again, that I was really pleased with the Capitola City Council's responsiveness to the people who took the time to show up and respectfully address their concerns with, as Tom Ginsburg said, reasonable requests. The reasonable requests were, please, we haven't even seen this project. Please, we haven't even seen a traffic study. How can we support this when we haven't even seen it? And so that's a very good route. Keep that in your pocket for other things coming down the pike. Let me take a moment to explain why I was at that meeting. And it was because I go to Santa Cruz County LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission meetings, because I always learn a lot. And it's a very powerful commission. I've interviewed Mr. Joe Serrano here on my program before because I'm interested in the consolidations of the fire departments. I'm interested in a lot of things that LAFCO has the jurisdiction to decide. Every 5 years, LAFCO does what's called a service and sphere review of all cities in the county and different special districts, fire departments, water, cemetery districts, park districts, all of those things, and determines are they operating in the most effective and efficient way to serve the public. That is the purpose of LAFCO. And sometimes the reports point out things and make recommendations, such as the one for the city of Capitola in 2022 did. The main thing that report brought out was that Capitola is financially solvent. They're doing a good job. They needed to update some things on their website, but mostly their sphere of influence, which is a line that is drawn politically and to say, well, if we want to expand, we can go this far. Maybe the city boundaries are not that far, and indeed they are not. The sphere of influence on the western side looks like it's at about 30th Avenue, actually. But the lines, as Tom was saying, are very it looks like a jigsaw puzzle on steroids, actually. So you could have one house on Capitola Road that is within the city of Santa Cruz, and the one next to it, within the city of Capitola, and the one next to it would be in the unincorporated. So those are the issues that LAFCO really tries to address to make it more uniform, effective government. So LAFCO had asked the city of Capitola to take a look at what they were going to do for annexation and to give them a plan. Are you going to annex? If so, how are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And if you don't want to do annex, then look at changing your sphere of influence by May of 2027, which would be the next 5-year cycle of this sphere and service review that LAFCO is required to do. They are required to do these every 5 years. So what came out of that was that the city of Capitola said, okay, we're going to hire a consultant for $45,000 to help us figure this out, but LAFCO, we can't afford that, so will you chip in some money? And LAFCO, the commissioners, said, yeah, sure, we'll chip in $15,000. So the study was done. And the results of that study were presented last night, and I think it was really poor information. Ineffective information. It detailed the area, and this would be a north study area that was from Highway 1 down to about, Portola, and then another study area, the Pleasure Point area, from Portola to the bluffs there. And it detailed the amount of revenue from property taxes would be an additional about $1.5 million. And then it identified other new revenues, and that would be about $5.5 million, and that includes sales tax, transient occupancy tax, document transfer tax, cannabis retail tax, which is a lot, business licenses, other things. And so that was going to bring quite a bit of money to the city of Capitola if they annexed those areas. But what seemed to take the stage was what was going to happen in terms of expenses. Now, the revenues had good dollar amounts, very good data you couldn't argue with, but the expenses had none. It just key impacts to expenses, a one-page thing. The police department was going to expand 22% area, because Capitola City, instead of the sheriff, would be responding. Public Works, the streets, would expand 58%. Parks and Recreation, with the number of parks, 124%. Well, I learned during COVID, actually, that these percents mean nothing. And without good data, you really don't know anything. But for some reason, the Capitola City Council said, no, we're not gonna annex. Well, they didn't take any action either to amend their sphere of influence. They simply said, here, we're going to send it back to LAFCO and let them decide what they're going to do. So that will be very interesting to see how that goes. Coincidentally, after the meeting, I did talk with the Capitola City Police Chief, Sarah Ryan. What is the call rate for law enforcement in the proposed annex area? Oh, nothing. Really nothing at all. So there you go. Well, this is a story to be continued. You're listening to Community Matters. My name is Becky Steinbrunner, and I'm here with you until 4 o'clock today. We have about 5 minutes here. If you have any interest in the Capitola potential annexation or not, and any other issue, please give me a call. 265-5050. That's in the lovely 831 area code 265-5050, and join the conversation. So this issue of annexation did sort of play in with the project at 3720 Capitola Road, where there are 2 lots that the owner has. One lot would be for the actual development, whatever that's going to be, and we don't know what that's going to be yet. It could be 43 units, it could be 88 units, it could be more. We don't know. But they were talking about multiple stories there in either case. And no parking, except that the developer owner did buy this other lot next door for parking that would provide 41 parking spaces, but that lot is in the unincorporated area. So this issue of Capitola needing to annex may come back to them, and it will be an interesting story to watch. So for the last 4 minutes, I want to just update you here. There are some issues, as I alluded to at the beginning of the hour, about the battery energy storage system rules coming to the County Board of Supervisors Tuesday. You can look at the agenda for the board. If you just enter in a search term, Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors, it will come up, and scroll down on the calendar there to November 18th. And this particular issue will be at 1:30 p.m. It is a scheduled time certain. So that's nice. You can be there, you can be there and not have to sit all day waiting, wondering when it's going to come. What I don't know is if you can't be there and you can only speak in the morning, if they will let you, because they've recently changed their rules. So show up whenever you can, especially at 1:30. Read the ordinance, and we'll get into this maybe a little bit in the second hour, and really emphasize that there needs to be a better level of fire safety, and we need to preserve our agricultural land, especially under Measure J, a voter initiative that said we are going to save our agricultural land. The other thing I want to let you know is that there is a town hall meeting. I believe it's with Supervisor, 2nd District, Monterey County Supervisor Glenn Church. That's going to be at the Prunedale Grange, and I hope that you will go to that. It's next Wednesday evening, I believe. If you have information on that, call in, and our next host, Nina Beety, may be able to fill us in on that. She has written to Supervisor Church about some of the issues that he has brought forth. Not only the moratorium on battery energy storage projects in Monterey County, and is it really going to make it a difference, but also what about the rules that Monterey County may develop for these large grid scale projects. Monterey County already has a bunch of them, as we all found out last January when the Moss 300 Vistra battery site caught on fire. And some have likened it to the Chernobyl of our area. Someone I've interviewed before, Dr. Michael Hogan, did call it that. Next Wednesday, November 19th, 9 a.m. to 11, he will be hosting an event at the Three Flames Restaurant. That's at 1547 Meridian Avenue in Santa Clara, San Jose, talking about California Environmental Justice Program's biggest secret, the Moss Landing disaster. So you can find that on the California Art and Science Institute website, and I urge you to check that out. Thank you for staying on until the next hour when Nina Beety will be joining me, extraordinary, wonderful researcher. So I am going to continue speaking because I have learned that my recording continues even though I'm not on the air. So for those of you who are listening to this audio recording on the Community Matters website. Know that this portion, the next portion, 6 minutes, is not being aired, but I would like to get some information out to you listening, and so I'm going to do that. And I will repeat some of it, so my apologies. But what I really want to urge you to do is to look at the Solano County Battery Energy Storage System website. The Solano County Board of Supervisors, it was actually their planning department, took a great step to involve the public, involve hazardous materials experts within their government, agricultural experts, and fire departments to really help them sit together for 15 months as an advisory group and craft their ordinance. And it is so well done. There are some holes in it a little bit in terms of the testing that should be done, but by and large it is really a model for us all to use. And I encourage you to read it and to really copy parts of it and put it in your reply, your comment to the County Board of Supervisors for the hearing next Tuesday, to give examples of what you want. And this goes back to Tom's comment, be reasonable. Be reasonable and respectful of the people who live there now. And that is not what is happening right now. The people who will be most affected by this have been shut out. The people who will be expected to possibly evacuate it's when these batteries would catch on fire, have not been consulted, have not been informed, have not been consulted at all, and have gotten no respect at all. So I will go through that a little bit right now, but one thing that I think we can all appreciate is that our county's ordinance has no piece about cybersecurity, and Solano County does. They would be expected to not all decisions regarding cybersecurity can be expected to be made prior to land use permits being issued. Project applicants shall agree to comply with all the requirements in an emergency response plan guidance document. So they have to comply. And that is a very strong piece of this document from Solano County. I believe that Solano County is the first to actually adopt an ordinance like this in the state. The County of Orange, the County of San Diego is also on the cusp, and Santa Cruz County is on the cusp. Our county's document is woefully inadequate, and I'm sorry to say that, but it is the truth. It has been largely written by the developer, and because the county is concurrently looking at the developer's permit. So our ordinance is being written to accommodate that developer's permit. So we have to be very strong. We have to, as Tom Ginsburg, a community in Capitola has done, we must be very connected. We must present facts. We must be reasonable, and we must keep demanding our elected officials to listen and to pay attention. You're listening to the interim of Community Matters. I'll be going back on the air here in about 15 seconds. but I wanted to use this time because it does come through on the recording, I have learned. Thank you for listening to Community Matters. We are here to provide the public with a good voice and to be heard. Welcome back to Community Matters. This is Becky Steinbruner. I'm honored to be here with you for one more hour. Thank you for staying on into the second hour after we had a good discussion about what many are seeing in our county as very tall, very dense development happening in their neighborhoods. We had with us Mr. Tom Ginsburg, a representative of the community on Bulb Avenue area of Capitola Road in Capitola. And I brought them into our discussion today because I witnessed such a positive thing that happened at the Capitola City Council meeting last night. Their elected officials listened to them, were very respectful, responsive, and they did a good job. Now, it's not over yet because the developer has another larger project that may have even less ability for people to really weigh in on, but they're doing good work. Those people, those representatives are doing good work. This hour is going to be a really interesting one too. Miss Nina Beety from the Monterey Peninsula is an incredible researcher. I have watched her work. I have read her work. She comes to some of our meetings in Santa Cruz County with information and testimony, and she's always very well informed, always has facts with citations, and is always very respectful. So I'll be waiting for her to call in. But what she will be calling in about today is her concerns with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, or MBARI, doing geophysical surveys in the Monterey Bay Canyon. And she points out some amazing information about the decibels that would be used in this work and how harmful that is to sea life. And yet here is MBARI, a world premier research institute, doing this, and she wrote them and copied many officials on it, and the response was completely dismissive. And so I'll let Miss Nina Beety, tell you that story when she calls in. But I think we all need to pay attention, because in the public meetings that I have been going to, a number of different representatives of organizations have been calling in, speaking up about how worried they are that the federal government may open up the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary to oil and gas drilling. And many people are very upset about this. At the Capitola City Council meeting last night, a member of the public stood up and said, we have to stop this, and we have to strengthen our already on the book resolution that we will not support any onshore development to support that industry. We need to strengthen it. And so this issue is coming up frequently now. But what is not coming up is what is already happening with MBARI, Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, doing these very harmful studies to map the ocean floor using high decibel sound waves that would, as Nina will tell you, kill many organisms and is considered by the military to be at levels of weaponry. So why are we allowing this? Why are we allowing this? So I'm going to welcome Nina Beety when she calls in, and you are in for a treat. While we're waiting for her to call, and this may spill in during our conversation with Nina, I again want to urge you all to participate as much as you can in next Tuesday's, that's November 18th, Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisor meeting at 1:30 p.m. when the board will be considering for the first time a draft of the, well, it isn't really the first time, but a draft of the county's rules to allow flammable explosive batteries, containers filled with flammable explosive lithium batteries, to be placed in our neighborhoods. The Board of Supervisors approved that in concept last October 29th, not of this year, but of 2024. And so that led to the ability of Sequoia Energy LLC with their installer New Leaf Energy to apply for a permit with the County of Santa Cruz for their project at Nacimiento Road in Watsonville. And since that, the developer, New Leaf Energy, has been basically running the show behind the scenes, leading our county officials by the nose at the behest of, in my opinion, Central Coast Community Energy, 3CE, who stands to make a lot of money from this and who needs to have this project here and wants to have this project here in order to have their energy quotas that they must do in order to stay a community-based energy organization. And they're waiting in the wings. I've seen it in Public Records Act requests. They're waiting in the wings for the county to take their action and approve this project. It is lithium. There are other non-flammable, non-explosive technologies available, and they exist. The county has not wanted to give them any time, any airspace. The county's Commission on the Environment, who has been given the prestigious duty of supporting the county's climate action plan, held 3 workshops from June through August, and there was no representation at all allowed, and I'm going to say that again, allowed, to give information about the non-lithium battery that is available. Even though manufacturers and suppliers of those non-lithium technologies asked for time, they were rejected by the commission appointed chairman, Mr. Chris Damhorst. Mr. Chris Damhorst wrote on his own the summary of all of those 3 commission workshops, never vetted it with a total commission, never vetted it with the public. And then there was a draft, an ad hoc committee that Mr. Damhorst chaired that put together recommendations for the county supervisors on their new rules. The public was not invited. The public was not represented. All of the research, all of the findings, all of the testimony that the public had presented were not included. Not included. Even though Commissioner John Hunt on the Commission on the Environment asked that it be included. It was not. So that's what we have coming before us next Tuesday. And I urge you all to go to you can find the information by going to Santa Cruz County BESS, and that's Bravo Echo Sierra Sierra phonetically. Stands for Battery Energy Storage System Ordinance, and the new web page will come up. You can click on the ordinance and find it. You can leave your comment. If you leave your comment, it's going to ask you to leave your comment attached to the board's agenda. If you do that, also copy it and paste it into an email that you send to individual board of supervisors, the individual supervisors on the board and their staff, because we have been told that when you submit a comment through the portal, the comment portal, it can take a few days to process it. And so the supervisors may not see it right away or in time. So take that under advisement, and I am happy now to see that Nina Beety has called in. Let's see if we can bring her on. Hello, Nina. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you great. Hi,
Excellent.
Becky.
Hello. Thank you so much for all you do and for taking time to be here on Community Matters today. I really am very grateful.
Well, it's my pleasure. To inform the public, such as you're doing, this is such a critical thing for all residents to be aware of events happening in their community. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's my honor. So, you have been writing to the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute about these sonar geophysical mapping projects going on. Can you describe for our listeners what exactly is MBARI doing?
They have equipment that is, this is topographical mapping they're doing of the Monterey Bay Canyon, the underwater canyon that flows roughly from Moss Landing out into the ocean. It's very deep. And they are doing, at least the current survey is just for the topography of that canyon. It uses very high decibel sonar equipment. These are levels that are as powerful as Saturn V rocket levels. The new equipment, they have a new research vessel, the David Packard, and that vessel has even higher decibel levels that are being used to ping and bounce off the sides and of the canyon or any surface. I mean, it can operate on over level seabeds. But in this case, they're mapping the topography and how it may have changed over time of the canyon walls.
Thank you. And why are they doing this work? Is it just for pure science?
I don't know. I don't know. The permit information is very minimal. It says to measure changes in bottom topography since first systematic multi-beam sonar surveys were conducted in 1998. That's all the information they have on their permit notification with the state.
What agency of the state is their permit with?
It's with the California State Lands Commission. As I understand it, there used to be, when this type of work was being done, there used to be a more extensive review process, but the commission itself turned to Sacramento legislators to change the rules so that it sounds like now it's basically an over-the-counter permit. There's no extensive evaluation. There's certainly no environmental impact review. There's more information on the State Lands Commission's website on their process and also how things have changed over time as far as their overview of this. But they are the issuing agent. Every company that does this has to go to the State Lands Commission for at least paperwork filing.
Mm-hmm. How did you learn about this happening, Nina?
Well, I've been aware of course, Navy sonar work and how destructive that is environmentally. But I was sent some permit notifications that people in the Sierra Club, the State Sierra Club, were getting, and with the sense that I should probably get on this mailing list. So I began getting all the permit notifications that were from the state. And it's quite alarming to see all the work that's being done. And these are from the California border all the way up to Northern California and including the Delta. There's quite a bit of survey work. They do this often when there's like a pipe that's going to be an outfall pipe that is going to be installed into an aquatic surface such as the bay, or when they're trying to find shipwrecks or debris in the ocean. They did this in off Santa Cruz this year. And so it's for a variety of reasons. Whenever they're installing something, often they'll use it. It seems to apparently be the cheapest way to do it, but without consideration of the environmental impacts.
Wow. I read your email that you sent to the president of the MBARI. It was incredibly well researched. Do you want to talk with us a little bit about the information that you sent to them and why you did send it to them?
Yes, thank you. I had sent a protest in January when I first learned that MBARI was doing these surveys off Moss Landing. This was shortly after the Moss Landing battery storage fire.
Yeah.
And the community was absolutely in crisis mode. In some ways, still is.
Yeah.
But it had just happened and was abating, I guess you'd say. And instead of stepping up to aid the community, MBARI was doing, and this isn't just the human impacts, but also the wildlife impacts.
Yeah.
They were doing these surveys. I think it was 2 days of surveys at that time, just offshore Moss Landing. And I sent a protest in at that time and described some of the issues, and then found that they were going to go back again Moss Landing this month from the 11th through the 16th. So the survey is supposed to go through tomorrow, and send another protest. But I'll just briefly cover some of the issues that I spelled out to them in both letters. First of all, the Marine Canyon is rich in life. There's upwelling of nutrients, and as any biologist should know, the edges of things, the niches, are where often there's the most interesting and abundant life between ecozones. And so we've got a marine canyon that has creatures living on the edges, and of course ones that are adapted, maybe even rare species that are in the depths that are impacted by this. And what the state is saying and what other agencies are saying is that hearing range is the only area where they need to be concerned about this. But when you talk about sound and the force of sound, there are a number of issues that apply, and hearing range is just one slice of the impacts. So I raised some of these issues with the aquarium, that you've got the Air Force found out years ago that inaudible sound can kill. And that's, to me, is a very scary idea, that you can't hear it, but it can cause organ death or outright kill you. Mm-hmm. Also, we know the experience of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge that collapsed, and that was a combination of frequency and resonance, like the wine glass that shatters when you say have the right note. The resonance is very, very important, as well as the frequency of something. The decibel levels that they're using, as I said, are equivalent or greater than the Saturn V rocket levels. And those rocket levels, those sound levels, would destroy the rocket. But they have put sound deflection equipment so that it gets the bulk of that sound away from the rocket, and the rocket doesn't just shatter. As you know, a rocket doesn't have ears, so hearing range doesn't really apply. This is about physics, it's about science, it's about the impact of sound. The scary thing is that David Packard boat has even higher. They're up to 237 decibels,
Oh my.
which is extremely high. A recent letter to the editor in the Carmel Pinecone from a scuba diver talked about the impact of surveys when they do oil and gas exploration, as well as the Navy's sonar work, and how scuba divers have what happens to them in the water when they've experienced this. It's frightening, and it's a safety risk for them as well. Any living being in the ocean risks this. And I just wanted to go over briefly 150 decibels. And decibels are in a logarithmic scale. It's not, like an arithmetic where you have 150, 160, and 160 is just 10 more than 150. It's 10 times. So if you have 150 decibels can be lethal. 160 is 10 times 150, and it goes up. The current equipment that that MBARI is using is 237 decibels, and that's, I don't have it written in front of me, that is, I believe, millions of times. Their old equipment was 191 to 221 decibels. And let me pull up my letter here that I had written it out. The top amount, 221 decibels, was 1 million times more powerful than those LRAD military crowd control devices, and 10 to the 12 times more powerful than OSHA limits. OSHA has a strict limit for what they allow for humans for 1/2 hour, which is only 110 decibels. So you can only imagine that this is beyond orders of magnitude. This is extremely powerful levels that not only that are lethal, they can damage organs. At the 150 is lethal, but lower than that can damage human organs. They found from research can injure and rupture internal membranes. This is just very, very, very dangerous equipment and dangerous work that's being done. And so I laid out some of the information, some of them from sound experts, to the aquarium on the impacts that they have found from research. It's frightening to think of what this can do in terms of shattering creatures and beings that we don't see. They're not going to float to the surface and you're going to see dead fish. I mean, you can from this. But what about the plankton that you're not going to see? What about the crustaceans? And so that was in my latest letter to them, in my protest, urging them, given all that's known about sound and what it can do to physical objects as well as biological beings, that this is not safe. It's impacting a critical environment, a rare environment. Everybody talks about how unusual the Monterey Canyon is, and yet here they're pounding it with sound. Wow. And if you want, I can continue to go into the response from the aquarium and then my response back to them.
Yes, I would like that because I read that, and that's what made my jaw drop. Their response to your excellent research, your pleading with them to pay attention to this information and think about what they're doing. Please continue. For those of you who have just tuned in, we're listening to Miss Nina Beety, an incredibly great researcher and active citizen in our community on the Monterey Peninsula, who is protesting the work that Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, MBARI, is doing right now in the Monterey Bay that is harmful to life. Please, Nina, go ahead, and thank you.
Thank you. Yesterday, I got a response from the president of MBARI, Angie Botius, and she said, "Dear Ms. Beety, I'm responding to your email. I understand that you've shared your concerns to my predecessor in the past. I'd like to emphasize again that all MBARI research is done in accordance with guidelines from state and federal agencies. MBARI's surveys use technology that is widely used by the scientific community for mapping the seafloor, and we follow protocols established by the Bureau of Ocean Energy. MBARI will continue to follow all appropriate state and federal guidelines when conducting research." And I was stunned because most people that have been following state and national events know that our state and federal regulatory agencies are often, well, it's kind to say that they're lax, but often they turn their back on the public and don't address threats, public safety threats, either environmental or health threats on many, many issues. And so I responded to her that I felt it was completely inadequate. I had raised very serious objections with evidence about the surveys and how much is at stake. And yet this response showed no interest in that, no questions, no curiosity, no intention to investigate, and certainly no pause in the surveys. The justification was basically state and federal agencies say that these are okay and a lot of people are doing them. And I find that I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
We all know about the regulatory rubber stamping that goes on, and the lack of independent scientific thought, a lack of consideration of independent research. These are extreme biological impacts that occurred. And we all know about the conflicts of interest with state and federal agencies, the revolving door employment practices, and that corporate, and in our case in Monterey Bay with the Navy, putting military interests as well as corporate interests above the facts, the research, and the well-being of the public and the earth. And I reminded her that we all recall when doctors in the 1800s were told, were urged to wash their hands between doing autopsies and helping women give birth to children. And the doctors were very upset with this information. And we all think, well, of course that's true. Of course that's not just science, that's common sense. But they followed, the doctors didn't want to do that. Galileo was pilloried as a heretic for daring to point out that the earth revolved around the sun, but that was heresy in his day. And so we know of many other examples where the established science is not accurate. Doctors used to promote smoking, and even in the midst of evidence that was extremely harmful. So I know of other examples by the aquarium and MBARI that the public may not be aware of, but have been in news articles. They have captured and implanted RF transmitters in hundreds of otters for their own experiments, despite what's known about the impacts of EMF RF on biological systems, including cancers, tumors, DNA damage, heart attacks, seizures, and a whole host of problems, as well as having a foreign object inside their bodies. Yeah. They also partnered with PG&E to capture and implant transmitters in otters in San Luis Obispo County, and implanted transmitters in rare badgers in Fort Ord in Monterey County for a doctoral student's experiment. 3 of those badgers died. At least one of them is known to have died from sepsis. Oh. So how many other animals are being tagged and implanted for MBARI, Monterey Bay Aquarium experiments? They also partner with Saildrone, a company engaged in high-powered sonar survey services, including for deep-sea mining and oil and gas surveys. I'm sure there are people in this community that could be whistleblowers about other practices of the aquarium. I wonder how many animals, I asked her, have died during capture and captivity so that the aquarium could develop techniques for capture and captivity of rare species and get the accolades and awards that result. Yeah. I could go on, but I know we've got limited time, and you may have other questions. I think that we need to, as a community, stand up and say these practices are unacceptable. Those of us who care deeply about the earth and the well-being of biological beings, our relatives, as the indigenous people say, and that is true, that it's important to protect our fellow species and to stop these practices. Waving the banner of science does not get rid of our obligation to protect nature, to protect the earth, our oceans, our air, our waters, and it's very critical. And I can't tell you the pain in my stomach, the nausea as I've considered this week. How could I stop this? Who could I reach out to?
Yeah.
Who could I explain in simple terms how these decibels impact living systems and that this is not safe? I still have hopes that she'll read my letter and she'll say, let's halt this, and at least spare some of the sea creatures in that area from being killed. I have hope of that. I think that she and all the people that work there, when they were children, they understood how wonderful this earth is and this ocean is, and how we can communicate with animals and how we can be partners in work. I think what science has done is separate people from their inner knowing. It's caused people to experiment on rather than collaborate with. And I think we need to change everything and go back to what we as children knew in our hearts, that we can work together for a healthier, safer earth where everybody's free to live. So anyway, that's get off my soapbox.
Wow.
And
Nina, that is beautiful. You're gonna make me well up in tears here, because how do we get the attention of those who are doing this? Who can we reach out to that could put pressure on them to stop? What has been your experience with, say, Jimmy Panetta, or who oversees this?
We do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's the battery energy storage fire or Fort Ord Superfund site or Love Canal or any of the disasters and contaminations and attacks on nature and us by different entities, corporations, the government. It's up to everyone. And I think that children who are closest to their core values would be most interested in this and may have the most success in getting the ear of politicians and agency officials. I think that I've tried reaching out over many years to officials, and there's too much beholdenness to sponsors for campaign contributions or just being part of the herd, if you will. Yeah. Everybody else thinks this way, so I would be odd if I stepped out and said something different, and prove it. And you and I and so many people have done so much work to provide tons of evidence on different issues and had it all ignored. Well, I need more proof. There's never, the bar just keeps getting raised higher and higher. Meanwhile, people suffer.
Yeah.
And people die.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we stop, and I think that we put people on the record. This protest and the responses were sent to the California State Lands Commission, copied to them, to the Monterey Bay Sanctuary folks at NOAA, to there were several agencies that I sent to, copied, and the Coastal Commission. And so they're all audience to these letters and to this evidence, and they're all standing there. And it's up to they're responsible now for this information to do something with it. Will they? I don't know. A lot of times those agencies, I've gotten very little response from the State Lands Commission. Mm-hmm. And the Coastal Commission occasionally will act in the ocean's interest on these big ticket issues like the Navy and SpaceX down in Vandenberg. It didn't have any effect because the FAA and the Pentagon was going to go ahead and do them anyway. But we keep putting it in the record, and then we find all creative songs and posters and artwork and those sorts of things to show basically what's going on, what the cost is from these sorts of projects, and we just keep just trying to be strategic about informing and educating, because I don't think most people understand that this is what the aquarium is doing, and far more. I mean, there are other things that I've been told over the years, and I'm familiar with, that they do in their, and it's considered perfectly fine, big things, little things, that are unacceptable. So, and what they do behind closed doors that the public absolutely doesn't know about, those folks know. And I think the things that have come to light are egregious enough. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the Monterey Bay Aquarium decided to abandon its emphasis on tech and started pioneering some alternative ways of being with the ocean that are collaborative? That would be just, I mean, they could set new standards for, change the definition of science to relationship.
Beautiful, yeah.
That's my hope.
And we, as you say, we each of us needs to do what we can to continue this, keeping it on the table, where it isn't just shoved off and forgotten.
Well, it was just a few weeks ago that there was a big press conference in Santa Cruz about oil and gas drilling and how the politicians said they were not going to stand for any of that, those threats to the ocean. And so I sent a letter to the editor to the Sentinel, the Santa Cruz Sentinel, and said, yes, and what about this other one? I don't know if the letter was published. When I checked back a few days later, it had not been. But our media is also a problem. Our mainstream media, because all the advertising that groups like the aquarium put in area newspapers, and it's very lucrative, and they often support the status quo. It's really important to keep pushing them and use also alternative media sources to get information out to the public so they can become informed about this. At the end of the day, it would be too bad if people stop coming to and take their money elsewhere and they won't come to the aquarium because of the reputation. It would be so much better for the aquarium to move to a more compassionate position in how they work and in their projects.
Indeed. The Monterey Bay Aquarium has a governance board of trustees. They are responsible for high-level strategy and includes members like Tegan Acton, who is the chair, and Julie Packard, the vice chair and executive director. They have an executive team that is led by the executive director and deputy director, and they have staff. Now, can you tell us anything about this board of trustees? Do they hold public meetings where people can go and stand up and speak?
I don't. That's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. The aquarium, for people that don't know, was funded or was started by David Packard's daughters. Julie Packard is one of them, and she had her background in study was in oceanography, and that was her, I guess, one of her dreams. She and her sister to create this, and Packard of the Hewlett Packard company, the Packard Foundation, as I've been able to find, continues to support the aquarium as well as MBARI. So it's from the tech industry that this was born out of a family's love for the ocean. But I don't know. I don't know if the meetings are public. As I recall, it's a nonprofit, but I don't know if nonprofits have to open up their board meetings to the public. Certainly, those people can be reached out to about this issue.
Yeah, and my experience with other nonprofits like the Community Foundation, their meetings are not open to the public, and you cannot do a Public Records Act request. I have done a little bit of research here. No, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Board of Trustee meetings are not typically open to the public, as it is a private nonprofit organization. So there are other opportunities to speak publicly about this. Have you had any success talking, say, to a board of supervisor where maybe televised or something like that?
No, I've spoken to the Monterey County Board of Supervisors, to the Pacific Grove City Council, to their Natural Resources Committee, to the Monterey City Council. I think those are the main governmental bodies I've spoken to several times about this issue, asking for their help in reaching out to the aquarium to stop this. There's been no feedback that they have done anything. The aquarium brings a lot of transient occupancy tax money into the cities for motel tax on motel stays. Again, these are people that are politically connected. So that route has been, I do it anyway because the public watches and the public doesn't. There were a couple of comments from public members that they didn't know this was going on. And some of these surveys are happening near special marine areas that are recognized by the state. This particular survey that's happening, I think the latest one, it's 2.5 miles. Let me pull the thing. It's 2.5 miles from marine protected areas, and it's also there's harbor seal haul out locations and a rookery that are not too far distant, but they're not within 2 nautical miles. Ignoring the fact that's what it says on the application. Ignoring the fact that sound travels in water much farther than it does on land.
Yes, it
and
does.
It's interesting to read Jay Murray. He's the scuba diver that wrote a letter to the editor. He's written other letters to local newspapers on his experiences as a scuba diver when these things were happening, not the aquarium, but the Navy. And that sonar work that was happening in the Indian Ocean was felt here in Monterey Bay at a high decibel level still. So this is something that 2 miles is nothing when you're talking sound and you're talking high frequency or
my goodness.
High decibel.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what Jay Murray has stated in his articles as a scuba diver, if things that he felt?
Well, the vibration was the thing. They were minding their own business, looking at the ocean, and the vibration, their lungs vibrating, and it was from out of nowhere, and just he said in the recent one, as I recall, he no longer scuba dives. This was absolute, and it's not. Many people first they didn't know what it was. And no one would say, everybody they contacted said there was nothing going on, until finally one agency said, you've stumbled upon a classified military exercise. And then it came out, and he has testified to the federal government on the Navy's use of this type of survey with all the evidence he's collected. I can provide that if you have a place to put links to articles and letters. I can send you that information. And in the end, the federal government said, yes, it looks like there will be ocean harm, but this is national security, and that trumps this. This exempts, this overrides everything. My question is, diplomacy is safer.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to back off these systems such that, and employ some good old-fashioned communication, respect of boundaries, respect of sovereignty of other nations, and if we care about an Earth continuing. I've heard talk about how the ocean is critical to the Earth health.
Yeah.
And whales and other creatures actually contribute to modulating climate. If we eliminate these creatures and have a dead, empty bathtub in our backyard as the Pacific Ocean, we risk having an Earth that's weather is completely catastrophic. And so it's, do we want the Earth to continue? Do we want not just a viable but a flourishing future? Then we're going to have to start saying these old ways don't work.
Yeah.
They're destroying us. We need to employ things so that we start disconnecting all these technological marvels to the military and start breaking our swords into plowshares.
Well said. Well said. Nina, thank you. I have always admired your amazing research. Where would you recommend that people could go to learn more about these studies that MBARI is doing now, and any possible information showing the harm?
I think one really good website that has connected to the offshore wind projects down in San Luis Obispo County, the REACT Alliance, and their website is reactalliance.org. They have archives of information, studies that have been done on the impacts of sound. They're very, very high decibel, and they have often multiple pieces of equipment that are all doing it once for these sorts of surveys for testing for offshore wind. But they have information there. You kind of just have to dig. I think there are some organizations that are fighting for a quiet ocean, but it's individual groups, grassroots groups that have sprung up with experts contributing their research. And you just start going into startpage.com, which is the alternate for Google, and putting in sound impacts, lethality, decibel levels, and also the people in the sound industry, for rock concerts and things like that. That there's a lot of people that have been studying sound for a long time, and that go in and do official assessment work for land-based stuff. So you can, just by starting to poke around in the internet for who's doing what on sound, the LRAD weapons, there's quite a bit on that. People can become their own researchers, and that's when you realize how powerful we can be.
Indeed.
to find out the information and collate it, and then present it to our friends and relatives and our community about what we find. But there's quite a bit out there. It's just in different places.
Indeed. The people are powerful and should not be dismissed because we are not so-called experts, right?
Well, the experts, if you just having a piece of paper or having letters after your name doesn't mean anything.
No.
Colleges are a bastion of collective thinking, and that can be really dangerous when it's just one viewpoint. It's when we're curious and we ask questions, and we're continually keeping open to the range of what's out there, as well as the independent scientists that often at great sacrifice investigate things that the government really doesn't want them to investigate, like sound impacts, like sonar impacts. The Navy, I'm sure, would like all those researchers to just go away. But the thing is that we know about the dolphins that strand trying to get away from these horrible sounds, and the whales and all the other creatures. We know about this stuff from independent research, from citizens that are not afraid to go down, shoot pictures, and publish it on the internet for other people to be aware of. So it's really up to us to wake up our communities to the threats. And I hate to say it, but at the end of the day, if the aquarium is not responsive, boycott the aquarium.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very becomes an important tool to getting them to pay attention.
Yeah. Indeed, sometimes that's all that they will listen to. That's all that they will listen to. For those of you that have joined us, we've got about 4 minutes left. We're speaking today with Miss Nina Beety, an amazing researcher, speaking out on behalf of the creatures great and small, and including those in the deep sea floor of the Monterey Bay Canyon, who are being harmed by Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute's very, very loud sonar geophysical mapping techniques happening right now. Nina, I want to thank you. What actions would you ask people to take today?
I think one of the biggest is to, if people are on social media, or they're on Nextdoor, or they're on access to their community newspapers, is to write letters of opposition to their local newspapers. If they find information about this, to send it to the TV stations and say, well, aren't you looking into this? This is a serious issue. To write to our state officials. The California State Lands Commission needs to be besieged by letters from people. They do have public meetings. So people can, I believe the meetings are once a month. And so there's the staff that handles the permitting, but there's also commission meetings, and there's a commission of people from different parts of the state that are part of that. They need to hear from the public that this is unacceptable, because the survey work that's being done all over the state by colleges, Occidental College has done some down in Southern California, different companies, Wolpert is another up in the Delta. I mean, we're talking about shark habitat. Divers, in some of these cases, if they had a diver, they could go down and do this assessment that they're using the sonar work for. They could use, I don't like underwater vehicles, but they could use these and be much more low toxicity than what they're doing. So there are other alternatives out there. And so State Lands Commission, State, John Laird, Don Addis, and other state assembly people, and then go to city council meetings. This is going to affect tourism for the whole Monterey Bay region. And so Santa Cruz City, Santa Cruz County, all the area cities should be getting uncomfortable that this is going on.
Thank you. And I think the surfing community should also weigh in on this. You think?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we've got a strong community coalition of that. I've looked up the next California State Lands Commission meeting. It will be Tuesday, December 16th at 1:30 p.m. So I urge you to, all of you listening out there, to get on their automatic notification list and speak up. Nina, thank you. In our last minute, what would you like to say with our listeners?
It's up to us as members of this earth, as many of us deeply respectful, caring people who love the creatures that we live with, the trees, the plants, the insects, the animals above the ground, in the ground and in the waters. And it's up to us to protect them. No one else is going to do it. And it's our voices, our hands, our mouths that will change things for them, that will make life easier for these fellow beings. But it is up to us. There is no Santa Claus. Officials are bound by so many strictures and not focused on these threats. We're there. We're the feet on the ground. And so we're the ones that can take the action. And we're so creative. There are many ways we can do that. So I just urge everyone to do that for this community and for this ocean.
Nina Beety, thank you very much for your good work and your good voice for all things.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're off the air now. Again, thank you for your good work and for taking time to join us here today.
Thank you so much, Becky. I so appreciate all the shining a light that you're doing on all these different issues, and I'll have to try to plug in and listen to some of the old things, because it just this is where it's at.
Yeah.
Is speaking and witnessing and finding those people that say, I can run with this, and I will run with this, and that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Nina, thank you. My next host here is waiting to get in the chair and set up.
Okay, I'll let him go.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Soon. Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye now.
Good show, Becky?
Yeah.